phoning from a second age of reason. I just had an idea and a suggestion. I don't know if you've noticed, but there seems to be a fair amount of natural and man-made disasters, and maybe now that we're seeing all this, it's time to take a moment and see what we can learn from all this. And what I'm thinking is, let's look at situations. Let's look at Tornado Alley, for example. In Tornado Alley, you have an area that has tornadoes. And these are where clouds dip down, swirling winds, 100, 200 miles per hour, and they take along with them bricks and building materials and trees and cars, and causes a lot of destruction. All right, what to do about it? Well, some people get killed, so property is damaged, they make insurance claims, or call it a natural disaster, and they rebuild. And sometime later it probably happens again. So this is a teachable moment now. What about rebuilding underground so that your home is flush with the earth? So the tornado can just sweep right over the top. And maybe it wrecks some of your trees and garden, but your house and you and your family would be safe underground. I'm just saying, that's something to think about if you're going to rebuild and you want it to last a long time, provided you're not in an area where there's too much flooding. Now, flooding is another kind of disaster. There's something to consider about when you are in an area that has floods. The water comes up, and you might want to consider either building your house on high ground in such an area, or building it on some kind of stilts, although if there's a really moving flood with debris in it, that would knock your house down anyway. I'm thinking more along the lines of putting floating pontoons on your house so that if the water were to rise, your house would rise with it. Although you couldn't have much of a basement or cellar in that arrangement, your house itself, if the floods were annual or every 5 years, it would rise to the occasion, make sure you have a good anchor, and then come back down after it's over. I'm just mentioning. And you may want to have attached on the porch of your house a boat of some kind, because if it does get deep enough to lift your house, you probably will need a boat to go away from the house to do errands. The other kind of disaster is earthquakes. The earth shakes. Well, then you have to make certain considerations in your buildings and how the building codes are, so that they don't smash and fall on the people so much. Granted that in a bad enough situation there's very little you can do, but you can at least do things to minimize it. So I'm not sure what those considerations are exactly, but I know people have given some thought to them about the way the building should be set on the earth, or the way the foundation is built, or the way the parts of the building are fastened together, so that when it rocks back and forth, tips, goes this way or that way, it can take it. And lastly would be something like a nuclear thing, where the nuclear power plant is leaking all over the place. Well, the key thing there is to make sure the nuclear power plant is away from populated areas. It's not so much populated area should not move close to a nuclear power plant. And you should not have a nuclear power plant built on a fault line, built on a volcano, or built in an area that floods frequently. You need to build it on stable ground that you know probably won't have an earthquake for thousands of years. So I'm just saying, those are just some considerations that as a disaster happens, let's look at things to minimize the effects of it in the future. Now that you have to rebuild anyway, let's build it right so you don't have to build it over again. Just saying. So if you want, rate and comment below. Make your suggestions about ways of taking natural disasters into consideration as you build your civilization, so that you won't get into these problems and it won't be so disastrous. So until later, we'll be seeing you.